Okay, for this demonstration, we are going to go to the Design and Make site to start with, and we're going to go to the project shop, and we're going to take a look at the new Western Scene collection. And what I wanted to do with this video was to show you how to recreate the hack here, the Sunset Reunion hack, that uses models from 4 of the projects that are contained within the Western Scenes collection. Um, Personally, I think this is a great hack. It's a great layout, and it uses a couple of the features that we covered in the first A Little Help Getting You Started with the Western Scenes collection video, the tilt and fade. And when they come up, I'll show you how to use those. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep this up, and we're going to go ahead and hop into VCarve Pro 8. Now, again, it's good to remember that all the tools that I'm going to use in this demonstration are available in VCarve Desktop and Aspire, so you can rebuild this in either one of those. The only thing that you want to no, I guess with the size we have, it's fine for VCarve Desktop. So that's great. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a brand new file, and this time we're going to make it 18 inches across, and we're going to make it 10 inches tall, which is great, our height. We're going to use a 3/4, we're going to plan it for a 3/4 inch piece of material, and the idea is that we are going to use a 1/2 inch of this for our actual layout, and then the remaining 1/4 inch of thickness we're going to use as a backing. So that's kind of the plan that I have in my head. The datum is going to be set to the center. We're going to use inches, of course, and we're going to use a very high resolution, and we're going to click OK. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our clip art tab, and we're going to go to our design and make folder, and we're going to scroll down through all the projects, and we're going to go to the ones that are part of the Western Scenes collection. And we're going to start off with the Sunset Sawagro. I can't pronounce that second word very well, sorry. So from here on out, I'm just going to call it the Sunset Project. Just makes it a little easier. You don't have to listen to me make a mess of the naming. And we're going to grab the Rustic Sign, number 5. And as always, like I've said before in the past, we're going to use these models very organically. This is the way I work with them when I'm putting together these hacks or the layouts. So we're just going to go ahead and grab one of these handles. We're going to size it up to be approximately the same width as the actual job space we have, and then I'm going to go ahead and move it up to the top. And then we are going to go ahead, let's take a look at our picture again. And so we need to get the plank for the bottom here, and that plank is going to be in the Praying Cowboy and Cowgirl project, and we're going to use the wood plank number 2. And when we select it, we're going to hold down the shift key, and we're going to rotate that around. And then we're going to go ahead and just hold down the shift key and size it up to be right about there. And we're going to slide it into place like that. Now, that's wonderful. That's pretty much all we're going to do in the 2D view. And we're going to flip over to the 3D view. And we're going to take a look at what we have here. So that looks pretty good. What we are going to do, though, this is a little trick we've never done before in any of the videos. So I'm going to go ahead and stretch this plank out just a little bit, so it's a little bit longer, and we're going to go ahead and nudge it into place. And it's set to merge already by default, so it's already merging into our rustic sign pretty nicely. We're going to go up one more nudge, and that's great. Now we're going to size it down just a little bit. I'm not quite happy with the way it's interacting with. There we go. That's perfect. That looks pretty good. And we're going to go ahead and click on the floating properties dialog, which is just clicking once I have this any component selected, and I click this large blue dot. It'll bring up my floating properties tab here, or window. And I'm going to keep this up for most of the time. If I happen to close it down, I'm always going to go back to it again. And we're going to go ahead and change this to be, the height of this is going to be 0.35. Now you'll see as I work with these, again, this is a very organic process. I pick whole numbers for right now, and if I have to go in and change those by smaller increments, then that's fine. But just to make it easier for me to kind of get going, that's what I do. And then we're going to go ahead and double click on the rustic sign, and we're going to make that 1/2 inch. So this is going to be the height of our rustic sign, is going to be the basis for how thick any of our components will be inside of our scene. We do not want them to be proud of the edge of this. We want the top edge of this Rustic Sign to be at the top of our board. So that's important to remember. And then we're going to go ahead now and start filling in the inside of this Rustic Sign. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the Mesa and Bush scene from the Praying Cowboy and Cowgirl scene. Now or project, excuse me, it's really quite big, so we need to zoom out a bit, and we're going to go ahead again and grab a hold of one of these sizing control handles, holding down the shift key. We're going to scale it to the center, and we're just going to scale it so it fits in there, roughly like that. We're going to zoom in. We're going to use our cursor keys to nudge it down into place. Just going to nudge it along there one step at a time until we're happy with where it's located. What I'm kind of looking for is how the mountains kind of marry up with the edge of the sign, and that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, something I do want you to note is that when you turn the model on its edge, you'll see there's a bit of a hard edge here on the top of the mountains, and that's there for a reason, so that we can tuck some things in behind there to give it even more depth. And we're going to use that near the end of this video. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to give this the height of this, shape height of this is going to be just around 0.3. That's about right, 0.3. I'm going to get 0.32, just again using whole numbers. And what we want to do is we want it to be thin enough so that when I start to layer up the other models along the front here, that we don't have any problems with using up too much of our Z height. That looks pretty good to me, so that's great. So let's go ahead to our ranch mantle, and we're going to bring in the cowboy and cowgirl, and you'll see that they're right here on the edge of our scene. So that's great. So we'll bring in the cowboy first, and he's what's going to actually dictate how the proportions of the other people in the scene. So we're going to scale him down. We don't want him to be too big, but yet we still want him to look pretty decent. We're going to slide him over to right about there, and I want to make sure that the horses, in the end, the horse's hooves are kind of buried into the edge of my sign shape. I feel that gives it a little more depth. You can't really tell right now. We're going to go ahead and mess around with the base height once we get the cowgirl in here in a second. Now this is one of the only times we're going to go back to the 2D view for a second. I'm doing this because the cowboy is kind of merging into the background here, and I can't see his head. And actually, maybe instead of going to the 2D view, we're just going to go over to our component tree, and we're going to hide that scene for right now. So that's great. Let's go back to our clip art, and let's bring in the cowgirl. Of course, she comes in quite big, so if we while it's selected, or while she's selected, you see the control handles here. We're going to press H on the keyboard. We got to select her again, and press H, and she'll flip over horizontally, and we're going to go ahead and scale her down. Again, we're looking for kind of proportions, so she might be a little bit smaller than the cowboy, but not much. And we're going to slide her back over here like in our picture. So let's just slide this out of the way for a second. That looks pretty good, and I'm going to actually make her a little bit smaller. And we are going to nudge her back a little bit. There, that looks pretty good. Maybe not too far back. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and turn back on our background, and now we're going to go ahead and mess around with the base shape height and base heights of both of these to see if we can avoid the background here. So we're going to go ahead and select the cowboy, and first of all, I'm going to make both shape heights the same. So we're going to make the 1/4 inch, again going with whole numbers just because it's a little easier. And also, them being the same shape height means they're going to get the same amount of detail when you go and see this. So it'll look pretty good. One won't be really fat, and the detail won't be really thin on the other one. So that's great. Let's go back to our cowboy again, and we're going to give this. We need to get him up high enough so that the bottom of the horse doesn't show any more of the bushes and the fence here. So let's just go ahead and slowly bring him up to maybe 0.05 and see what that does for us. Not too bad, but still the reins and so on are the wrong side of the fence post. So make it 0.1, and that looks pretty good. I like that. That's really quite nice. The only problem that I see right now is the peak of his hat, and you can see that it's slightly green. That means that it's buried inside of that background. So we're going to fix that in a second. Let's go to the cowgirl, and we're going to bring her up 0.1 as well. And well, that didn't work out nearly as nicely because you can still see a bit of a bush here around the end of the horse. So we have a couple options. One, we can try to nudge her away from that, which I don't think is going to help us any. Oh, there we go. That's not so bad. And then maybe we're going to add a little bit more base height to her. And there we go. So now she's popped out a little closer to us. Now, again, I mentioned earlier that I don't want any of these models to be when you add up the shape height and the base height, to be any more than the 1/2 inch that the Rustic Sign is. So in this case, it's not at all. It's only going to be 0.4 of an inch. So that's still 0.1 of an inch off. So that's perfect for what we need right now. And also these guys are avoiding everything with the exception of our cowboy. So let's look straight down on our layout, and we're going to go ahead and get it so that our cowboy is right in front of us. And we're going to tilt him up a little bit. So we're going to tilt from the bottom of the horse to the top of his hat, just a little bit, just so that he pops out of the background up here. So we're going to go ahead and tilt. We're going to set. We're going to click one anchor point down here and the other anchor point up here, and we're going to go ahead and make this 0.5% and see what that gives us. That looks pretty good. His hat's popped out of the background. There's no more green showing. We're going to rotate that around a little bit. It looks pretty darn good, I must say. Maybe we're going to make this 0.55 just to bring it up a little bit more. Great. Let's look back down straight down on our layout. I think that's pretty good so far. Pretty happy with that. So the next thing we're going to do, let's look back at our layout here, or our image that we have from the website, and we'll see the other side here. We've got the cowboy playing the guitar. We've got the cross. We have some ground here, a fence, and then his horse. So I think what we're going to do first of all is we'll bring in the fence, because that kind of tells us where the cowboy should be. Bring in the cowboy. Then we'll layer up the cross. We'll cover up the base of the cross with the ground, and then we'll fit the horse in as best we can, and see where that gets us. So let's go ahead and minimize that. Go back to our clip art tab, and then we're going to go ahead and look for our fence. So that's in the cattle roping project, and we are going to go ahead and double click on that and bring it in. Now it kind of gets hidden in behind everything, so we're going to be looking at the green silhouette to kind of line this all up. We're going to bring that in there, and then we're going to size it down to be around. Let's take a look at our picture again to see how. So this fence post is right just on the outside of the fence post that's part of the background. So that's good to know. So we're just going to scale that down to about there. That looks good. And we'll nudge it up a little. And now we need to go ahead and give it some height. So let's just go ahead and see if we can get it to where it needs to be. So let's make our shape height the 1/4 inch, and then we're going to give it a base height of 1.1. Excuse me. So that should pop it out a little bit. And let's take a look at that. What we've got. Now, it doesn't look too much like a fence post, because I think that when I gave it my shape height too much, it ends up round, like making everything look too oval. Along with these thin areas, you're going to want to be careful, because the wood, depending on the grain, the direction of the grain, and also how thin these are, might get brittle. So we want to try and keep it as low as we can, and use the other elements around it to kind of protect it. So we still have the cross and the horse to put in there, so that'll kind of protect some of these bits. So let's just go ahead and make it maybe a 0.15 instead. And that looks a little bit better. I like that better. We might need to go in and give it more height once we get the horse in and so on, but that's a good start. Okay, let's go ahead to our sunset project, and we're going to bring in our cowboy. We're going to go ahead and scale him down again. And we're looking at all the people in this project to make sure that everybody is a good scale. So right now it's kind of hard to tell, but I think that he's going to be good right around there somewheres. And we're going to go ahead and change his shape height. So let's change that to a 1/4 inch. Yeah, that's great. And we're going to give him a bit of a shape height of 0.1. You'll see that the numbers are pretty much always the same, and that's just the way that I work. In the end, again, we can come back and you can kind of slowly tweak those to be better. Let's roll it up on its edge and see what we have. That looks pretty good, and the detail is nice. Again, we used a 1/4 inch for the shape height for these guys, so the detail should be pretty good all around for all three of those people. And now let's go ahead and bring in the cross. So we're going to go to the praying cowboy and cowgirl. We're going to bring in the wooden cross. And again, we're going to size it down. And we're going to try and make it look like a reasonable cross. Maybe something like that. Might be pretty good. We'll see in a minute. So let's go ahead now and use our defaults here, 1/4 inch. And then we're going to make the base height 0.1. And that raises it in front of the fence. So that looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. And it gives us a little bit of room at the base here to put in a little bit of ground, extra ground. And so that'll kind of add a little bit to the scene. So let's go ahead and get that that ground, and it's up here. And we're gonna go again. You can't see it because it gets tucked in amongst the background there. So we'll size it down a bit. We'll nudge it over a little bit here. And now we're going to go ahead and give it some shape height. We might as well go back to the 1/4 inch and 0.1. Probably needs to be, we'll see what 0.1 gives us. That looks really kind of exaggerated. So let's change this to 0.15. And let's just go ahead and slowly bring this up to where it's in front of the cross. That looks good. And let's just nudge it down a little bit. I don't want it to look too crazy. Let's size it up a little bit. I like to bring it up by his, maybe just slightly put it by the toes of the cowboy. And then we're going to bring it this way a little bit. Like there. I think that's pretty nice. That looks good to me. So it kind of gives a little more depth going on there. And then we're going to bring in the horse number 3 from the praying cowboy and cowgirl project. And we're just going to plunk him in there and scale him down. Now this guy here might be a little bit different than the other one, so he might be a little bit more of a mature horse. So we're going to make him maybe a little bit bigger than the other horses, which is fine. And that looks good. Now we got to go ahead and change its shape height and base height and shape height. Again, it's a 1/4 inch. We're going to make it again matching everything else. I'm going to give it 0.1. And luckily the way this is going to work, I hope, is that a lot of the horse will be above the fence, and that way we can kind of utilize the fact that the horse gets thinner as it comes down the legs a bit to kind of work to our advantage. And that so far looks pretty good. Now this is where we're going to use our fade, because I really don't want to change the shape height and the base height of the horse up here. I just want to kind of fade it in behind. So we're going to go ahead and take our horse, use the fade. We're going to set that, our first anchor point here, down to there. And by default, it fades at 50%. Let's make it 35 and see what we get. We don't want to lose too much detail. I'm pretty happy with that, I think. Let's try 25. And we're going to see if we can squeak some more height out of our fence. And we can. We have a little bit more height here we can work with. So let's just go ahead and grab our fence and bring our base height up by a little bit. And we got 3.5. And there we go. It's just slightly above the legs of the horse. Let's look straight down on it and make sure we don't have any other problems. Problems being maybe the fence is going to peek through the cross, or it's going to look funny around the legs of the horse. And that looks pretty good to me. We might want to just bring it up a little bit more to 0.4. That's good. That looks pretty decent. Okay, and we're just going to make sure we have a little bit of a step there. We do. That looks great. Perfect. Okay, so overall that looks pretty nice, pretty great layout. So the next thing we need to deal with is the sky. So if we look back at our picture from the website, we have the sun or the moon in here, and we have some clouds. So let's go ahead and add those in. And as I had mentioned before, these mountains are raised up proud of the background, which is really quite nice, because now we can go ahead and go to the sunset project, and we can bring in the sun or moon model, because it can be used for both depending on what kind of story you're trying to tell. And we're going to scale that down to be, you know, a nice size so it looks like a good size moon or sun. This is sunset, so I guess it'll be the sun. And also so that the high point of the sun is just above these mountains. And if we rotate around a little bit, this will be able to tell us how much room we have. So let's go ahead and bring this up to 1/4 inch like everything else. That's a little too thick, so we can't do that. So let's go with 0.2. We're just going to kind of ratchet it down. Or you can use a little slider here too, which is kind of handy. When you let go of the button, it brings it, it'll actually apply the change. Let's give it a little bit of a base height, just so that it ends up increasing this here, the space here, and that way when you machine it or you CNC it, you're going to have some place to catch some of whatever you use to finish it with the stain or whatever you're going to use. That's kind of nice. And let's look back straight down on it. And I think that's a pretty good size moon or sun. Now let's go ahead and bring in some clouds. Now this project, the sunset project, has some of these wispy, not wispy, but kind of chunky looking clouds, which are nice. But I really like the one from the Ranch Mantle project, and just the cloud number 1 here. I'm going to bring that in, and again it kind of gets tucked into everything, but we can see it because of that green glow we see. We're going to size that up. And I like to have it kind of overlap the sun a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our shape height to be 0.15, and we're going to go ahead and make our base height 0.05. Oh shoot, sorry, I got too many points in there. 0.05, and we'll see what we get. That looks pretty good. This is a little too, the texture of it's a little too much for me, so let's just go ahead and make it a little less. It looks pretty good. Now I'm going to use the same cloud on the other side, so we're going to select it, and we're going to press Control, Shift, and H, and that will flip it across our project to the other side. And now it looks a little bit too symmetrical because they're both kind of pointing the same way. So with it still selected, I'm going to press H one more time, and that's going to, we're going to press H one more time, and that's going to flip it around for us so that it just kind of looks a little bit different than the other side. And maybe we'll just kind of scoot that over a little bit. Looks good. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put one more. So instead of us bringing in another cloud from our clip art library, we're going to go ahead and hold down the control key while I drag this cloud up. And what that will do is it will tell VCarve to make a copy of that, seeing as I had the control key down, and just plop it right up where I'd like it to be. Now to me that looks pretty nice, just kind of hazy looking, and looks great. So I think overall that looks pretty good. We'd like to be able to get this to our customer to kind of approve it, or to our wife, or whoever happens to, our family member who needs to say yes to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to View, and we're going to, first of all, we're going to turn off our modeling plane, and then we're going to go back to View again, and we are going to use our shadow shading. That gives it a nice contrast. Now that looks great. Now the finishing touch would be to be able to simulate the V-carving of the sunset reunion text at the bottom, but we can't do that unless we do some simulated tooling, and I don't want to take the time to do that right now because my customer hasn't approved it yet, but we do want to lay it out there so we can see that it fits in there nicely. So let's go to our 2D view. We're going to press F on the keyboard. That'll focus everything onto our full job space. We're going to grab we're just going to select our board so it's highlighted just so I can see it really well. And we're going to go to our drawing tab, bring up our text, and we're going to use the Pristina font that I happen to have installed. I'm not sure where it came from, but it's installed on my computer. And we're going to go ahead and type in Sunset Reunion. And I'm just going to check my spelling because I am notorious for spelling everything wrong. R-E-U-N-I-O-N. It looks perfect. So we're going to go ahead and click Apply, close that down, and we are just going to hold down the Shift key and drag it right down straight. Holding down the Shift key, of course, locks it into the up and down so it won't veer left or right on me. Size it up just a little bit. And that's centered on the board. Now if you can't see where it is, because of course these the background, or the rustic sign, and the plank merge together in our final layout, and you can see that some of the plank is missing. But we really can't see that in our 2D view. So to make that work, what we can do is we can shift select both the plank and the rustic sign, and then we're going to right click on that, and we're going to group those objects. And when we group those together, VCarve Pro will make one bitmap for us to view. And now we can see, if we look at our modeling tab, first of all, there's a group now. And if I open up the group, there's the 2 bits. But it's made one bitmap for us so that we can see where everything is, and we can make the decision on where we want this to be. And I think right there is a better choice, because the R is away from the edge of our plank. So when we V-carve it, we won't be too close to the edge. So that's perfect. And then we can go ahead, if we want to, we can ungroup it. If we'd like to, we can select it, right click, and we're going to say move to back. That'll bring everything else, all the other bitmaps, to the forward for us, and move that group to the back. That way we can see our layout a little bit better. And let's go to our 3D view, off select the group, and there we have the layout. And I think it looks pretty similar to what we have here, but we've rebuilt it in VCarve Pro. I hope that was helpful. Again, we covered all kinds of neat little tricks. We've covered the tilt and fade again. We covered kind of using one component to deal with scaling of everything else. We showed you how to group things, and also how to lay out some really basic text, and how you can make sure that it's going to land where you want it to land. Let's not forget how well this layout illustrates the hackability of the projects that are included in the Western Scenes collection. They work really well together. There's all kinds of opportunities for hacking them together, for hacking these models in with other models like the Western Saloon number 2 or number 3, or even any of the other projects that we have, which give you really limitless opportunities for coming up with some really nice looking hacks and layouts. If we go back to the Design and Make website, you'll see also that we've given you some other great ideas to get you started with some hacking. And if you look at all of the individual projects, they all have food for thought listed. So here's some great food for thought that you could definitely use as a starting point for some pretty nice looking layouts, and add in some models from other projects as well. Important note, if you plan to create tooling and run it on your CNC, make sure that you use values for the material setup and for the parameters of each toolpath that are safe and appropriate for your CNC machine, the tooling you have available, and whatever material you are planning to use for your project.